Hi, I'm Natasha, and it is so great to be back here with you again today. I have a question for you. Can you think of a time when someone did something unexpected, but that act or gesture made you feel loved and appreciated? I remember on my birthday, my friend surprised me with a lovely gift and an even lovelier dinner. And although that was totally unexpected, it made me feel so loved and appreciated. Let's watch today's God story and you'll see where we're headed with this.
What has ears but can't hear? A cornfield. Hey friends, it's Alyssa here, and I'm so excited to share a God story with you today. Now, I want you to think, what do you think of when you hear the word kingdom? Maybe you think of fire-breathing dragons and castles and moats and kings and queens. Maybe you think of knights and a round table, or maybe you think of magic. Whatever it is, I'm sure it's really exciting, and that's what we're talking about today, the kingdom, and it is really exciting. That leads me to today's big idea. Jesus shows us what God's kingdom is like. Now, kingdoms here on earth might be built by military rule or violence or a lot of stuff that's not really great, but God's kingdom is so much different. Jesus shows us what God's kingdom is like. He showed us when he spent time here on earth. God's kingdom is wherever he rules, where Jesus is Lord. And when we say Jesus is Lord of our lives now, we get to experience the kingdom in fullness in our lives right now, not in part, but in whole. We get to experience the fullness of God's kingdom right now. Jesus was 30 years old when he began his ministry here on earth. He began telling people about the kingdom of God and showing people and teaching people how to live and how to love. Jesus constantly talked about the kingdom of God or the kingdom of heaven. He wanted to show people how they could experience the fullness of God's kingdom here and now. Jesus often used similes or comparisons to talk about what the kingdom of God is like. And so because of that, people really had to use their imagination to really listen to what Jesus was saying, not just with their ears, but with their whole hearts. We're going to take a look at a few ways that Jesus describes the kingdom of God. These are found in Matthew chapter 13. In Matthew 13, Jesus was out by the Sea of Galilee, and a large crowd had gathered to hear him teach. Word had gotten out about how awesome this man Jesus was, and lots of people wanted to hear what he had to say. There were so many people on the shore that Jesus had to get into a boat to teach the people, and they stood on the shore to listen to him. Jesus used common things that people would know about to share his ideas. The first one was about a farmer planting some seeds. Let's read it from Matthew chapter 13, starting in verse 3. A farmer went out to plant his seed. He scattered the seed on the ground. Some fell on a path. Birds came and ate it up. Some seed fell on rocky places, where there wasn't much soil. The plants came up quickly because the soil wasn't deep. When the sun came up, it burned the plants. They dried up because they had no roots. Other seed fell among thorns. The thorns grew up and crowded out the plants. Still other seed fell on good soil. It produced a crop of 160 or 30 times more than what was planted. Whoever has ears should listen. Okay, now that might sound a little confusing, but even the disciples were confused. They asked Jesus, "Why do you teach with these kinds of stories?" And Jesus responded that it was because this was prophesied about him in the past, and it was so that people would really listen to what he had to say with both their ears and their hearts. Jesus went on to say, here's what the story of the farmer means. Let's read it. People hear the message about the kingdom, but do not understand it. Then the evil one comes. He steals what was planted in their hearts. Those people are like the seed planted on a path. The seed that fell on rocky places is like other people. They hear the message and at once receive it with joy, but they have no roots, so they last only a short time. They quickly fall away from the faith when trouble or suffering comes because of the message. The seed that fell among the thorns is like others who hear the message. But then the worries of this life and the false promises of wealth crowd it out. They keep the message from producing fruit. But the seed that fell on good soil is like those who hear the message and understand it. They produce a crop of 160 or 30 times more than the farmer planted. In other words, Jesus is saying that when the word, or the seeds in this case, fall on good soil, our hearts, we will know that because we'll see the fruit of it. That means that we'll want to share this good news with others. We'll love God well and love others well, and so much more. Jesus went on to describe the kingdom of heaven like this. The kingdom of heaven is like a mustard seed. Someone took the seed and planted it in a field. It is the smallest of all seeds, but when it grows, it is the largest of all garden plants. It becomes a tree. Birds come and rest in its branches. Jesus is saying that his kingdom doesn't spread with big, flashy things, but with small, simple acts of love and sharing the good news message. It's like a mustard seed. It's small, but when it's planted, it surprises us with how big it grows and how awesome it is. Jesus goes on to say the same thing about yeast, which is something that you put in bread to make the dough rise. Let's read about it. Jesus told them still another story. The kingdom of heaven is like yeast, he said. A woman mixed it into 60 pounds of flour. The yeast worked its way through all the dough. Jesus went on to make another illustration. He said the kingdom of heaven is like a treasure that was buried in a field, and a man sold everything he had to buy this field so that he could dig up this treasure. From this story, we see that the kingdom is worth everything that we have. It's worth making big sacrifices to participate in the kingdom. From everything Jesus says in Matthew chapter 13, we see that we get to live as kingdom people now. We can follow Jesus in his kingdom way of living, and that is so exciting. Thanks so much for hanging out with me today, friends, and I will see you next time.
Quickly turn to the person next to you and answer the following questions before the time runs out. Starting now. Question time. In his time teaching people, Jesus spoke a whole bunch about the kingdom of God, kingdom of heaven, kingdom hearts, or A and B. A and B. Often, Jesus would teach in stories called allegories, parables, novellas, or nursery rhymes. Parables. True or false, we can now already live as people of God's kingdom. True.
Game time! Mad Lab. How many times can you say the key verse before things get gooey? Say it with me. Jesus said, "Whoever wants to be my disciple must say no to themselves. They must pick up their cross and follow me." Matthew 16, verse 24. Get ready. 3, 2, 1, go!
That was really interesting. When we receive Jesus' word in our hearts, we'll live in a way that will show his love to others. And what really encouraged me is that we don't even have to do big, flashy things to reflect Jesus. Even the small, little acts of love and kindness will spread his good news message. Kyla shared her story with us, and it was a great example of showing Jesus' love to others. Let's watch this.
It's interesting how our life is guided by emotions. You know, when we're happy, we tend to surround ourselves with people and activities that make us happy. For myself, when I'm happy, I surround myself with friends and family, whether it be video chatting my friend or just spending time with my sister. That makes me happy. The opposite happens when we're sad or upset. When I'm sad or upset, I tend to withdraw from people. I want to hide away in my room and not see anyone, not talk to anyone. That also happens with my relationship with God. When I'm sad or upset, I tend to not turn to God or even not talk to him because of how upset I am. There was one point in my life when I was really upset and sad, and it was when my parents were going through a divorce. During that time, I just didn't feel like doing anything. I didn't feel like doing homework. I didn't feel like spending time with friends. and my relationship with God really started to go downhill. I stopped going to church. I stopped feeling connected at church, and there's at one point when I stopped talking to God altogether. And it was just a really hard time, and I didn't find anything at church that could really help me through it. So I stopped going to church for about a year, and that is when one of the youth leaders at the meeting house started reaching out to me, Carissa. She started asking me if I wanted to go out for dinner and go out for coffee. So I went out and met with her, even though I didn't really know her. And when we were sitting and having dinner together, she shared about her personal life and her journey with God as well, and just how it was sort of similar to what I was going through. And yeah, she just shared not just about her journey, but also her personal life, and just talked about herself. And it made me feel like it was two friends chatting. So she really encouraged me to come back to church, and I felt welcomed. Once I started going to church, I realized that other people were also going through difficult situations in their life, personal life, even, and their relationship with God, that they were also sometimes can struggle with that. And that made me feel not as alone, and that I also could have a relationship with God, but also struggle with it, and I will make it out okay. I started to realize that I wanted to be baptized and really dedicate my life to being a Christian. And so that just showed me what God's kingdom looked like and what it meant to be a part of that kingdom. At first, it was very nerve-wracking. Like, I remember right before I was about to get baptized, I was like, I don't know if I should be able to do this. Like, I didn't know if I was ready or not, but I was encouraged by Carissa, my mom, saying, no, you've thought about this for about a year, and you want to do this, so you can go ahead and do it. And once I did it, I felt great. I was happy that I did it, and I'm still happy that, I'm still developing my relationship with God, and I'm happy about it. As I continued to go to church and build my community in church, I realized that church isn't made up of perfect people. It's made up of broken people leaning on God and talking about their relationship with God. And as I've continued to go to church, I've met more people and developed more relationships with them, and have been able to speak to more people about my relationship with God and my story with Him.
Isn't it amazing how Kyla wasn't pressured to go back to church, but she simply spent time with a friend, talked about how she felt and what she was going through, and through that simple act, she was able to feel the love of Jesus? This reminds me that we can all be a reflection of God's kingdom. When we look at Jesus, we see God's kingdom, and when others look at us, they can see the same love through us. Let's break into our small groups now and see what this looks like in our own stories.